A big thank you comes to you today from Dead Rabbit via Patreon for his long support of the channel. Ovika against Urza Chief Artificer with a pretty damn good hand actually, so we'll keep that one. We'll go for a tap land on turn 1. Seeing more ramp in the form of Izzet Signet, so yeah, just to save me reorganising my hand, we'll drop the Izzet Signet. A mana crypt from our opponent. And we see an unwind, so we can protect our commander once it hits play. We just need to concentrate on ramping here, so make a 4th piece of mana which allows us to set up for next turn. And with the Grim Monolith and all our other pieces of mana, that means that we can likely go for the Ovika by turn 4. Alright, and it's a Shared Animosity which is obviously used as a setup piece for all the Phyrexian goblins, so we will attempt our commander here and see if it can get through some counter magic. So there we go, that is a mana leak from our opponent. So we'll need another land over the next few turns in order to replay our commander. Can't pay into that, so obviously our commander gets countered. Yeah, we need to untap the Grim Monolith as well at some point. I've already pressed no on that. Now we see Thopter Spy Network from our opponent. So see if we can get into a land here. No, we do get into additional mana in Strixhaven Stadium though, so that's still not enough mana to untap the Grim Monolith. So we can just hope for a land next turn, I suppose. And if not, we just play Strixhaven Stadium next turn and wait another turn to get our commander into play. Either way, we're not playing our commander then. So yeah, we're just untapping Grim Monolith for 4 mana at the end of our opponent's turn. Thopter Spy Network makes its first Thopter token. They haven't lost a single mana crypt flip yet, which is ominous. Alright, and our opponent gets into Cavern of Souls, which is exactly what we need, so we're likely going to see Urza here. We've got a rapid hybridization for it at least. Instead going for Kappa Cannoneer, so that enters as a 5/5. It does trigger itself upon entry. Let's untap the Grim Monolith now, and we're just hoping that we get into a land at this point again. Alright, there is Scalding Tarn, so we're just trying to tap out into our commander again at this point. Luckily we've got the Fierce Guardianship to protect it for free. Get out of dual land. And there we see Ovika hit play this time, which is excellent, so pass over to our opponent. A Thopter enters, so Kappa going to get another plus counter, which means it can't be blocked this turn, and that is a 6/6 with ward 4, so quite the clock that we're on. And there we see Urza Chief Artificer. Don't have a means of going for the rapid hybridization onto that, unfortunately. It might have to be a 5 mana rapid hybridization onto the Kappa. I think that's more of a threat at the moment. Got Menace on the Thopters as well, so we get hit for 7. And they do draw a card to the Spy Network. And then it is a Tribute Mage searching for an artifact with CMC 2. So deciding to just fish out an Arcane Signet with that could have been a lot worse. As a Chief Artificer is going to trigger at the end of the turn, making a big artifact token. And of course that does have Menace. Puts a plus counter on the Kappa. And there is a snap for us. So yeah, I'm thinking we're just going to have to do some stuff during our opponent's turn here. Maybe get down the Strixhaven Stadium for a bit more mana. That will make us some chump blockers for now. Maybe we can hold our opponent back with a Shared Animosity. Yeah, maybe that will keep them from swinging in at us as liberally. Yeah, let's go for that here. And then we can Pongify or Rapid Hybridization onto the Urza before our opponent's end of turn. So yeah, we'll make 3 more Phyrexian Goblins. And yeah, we could swing in with the Ovika here, that is 6. And then plus 6, so that's 12. So could turn in sideways and force our opponent to block. I think we're best going for a big Alpha Strike because they could probably get us on the swing back. Well, probably not actually. Yeah, I doubt they can get us on the swing back here. Let's go for attacking with everything. I'm going to be really aggressive here and actually quite greedy. So all of our creatures are Phyrexian, so they get plus 6/6. These Phyrexians are 7/1s. Our commander is a 12/6 in the air, so they can chump block with a Thopter token, but that debuffs the construct. Alright, so a construct goes in the way. I'm surprised they're throwing this thing away. But that's fine with me. Yeah, I'm glad I attacked now, because this is a hell of a lot of damage coming through. And deciding to pull back the Thopter and instead not take as much commander damage, so that is 28 points of damage on our opponent. Alright, and they're throwing their commander away as well, which is really good. So taking 21 points of damage. Alright, and they're yeah, they're not quite sure here. We're putting our opponent in quite a tricky spot here, apparently. 6 cards in hand though. And yep, deciding to take the 28 points of damage and leave the Urza in play. I think that's probably the wise move because they can stand to get a construct from that. Strixhaven Stadium going to start becoming a threat now because they have 4 counters on there, or we have 5 counters on there even, because you get one when you tap it as well. So they go down to 9, and we're just holding up the rapid hybridization for that commander. Kappa Cannoneer will be unblockable this turn thanks to the Thopter Spy network. And then they get another plus counter by dropping an Ancient Den, which is an artifact land. And then we see the Arcane Signet they tutored up previously, which makes it a 10-10. And then tapping out into something, looks like an improvise card of some kind. So, Where of Invention, does that have improvise? Can't remember. Okay, and then deciding to untap everything, so apparently changing their mind. Instead deciding on Anointed Procession, which, yeah, we could counter that, but I'd rather counter a board wipe or something with the Fierce Guardianship. So now going through to combat, and it's looking like we're going to get them on the next turn. Alright, deciding to hold back instead, so before the end step we'll go for blowing up the Urza so that they don't get a couple of the construct tokens, and that obviously gets us into another Phyrexian Goblin with haste. They're still going to have a couple of blockers here thanks to the Anointed Procession. They do get 2 of the frog tokens, and they've still got a couple of flyers to get in the way of the Ovika as well. So we're just going wide on our opponent here, I think. No means of drawing a card with the Mystical Tutor, putting something on top of our library, but what we can do here is just go for the Snap. That can go onto the Kappa Cannoneer, I think. Yeah, and our opponent scoops there. We would have got a couple more tokens, so that would have been 7 Phyrexian Goblins in total. Maybe would have gone for the Phyrexian Tutor, I didn't work it out, but I think once we bounce this thing, we're going wide on our opponent. They've only got 4 blockers and we'll have some massive goblins. So yeah, Shared Animosity doing some work for us there. Up against Skrelv this time, which is a commander I haven't had any ideas for, so I'll be intrigued to see what my opponent does with it. Yeah, we've got a decent amount of mana, so we will try it. We're on the draw as well, which puts us steps closer to even more mana. And we see a turn 1 Skrelv from our opponent, as you would assume. And there we go, draw into another land, so I think going for the Brainstorm is fine, and then we can shuffle stuff we don't want away next turn. Getting a poison counter from the 1-1, and then going straight through to the end of the turn with 2 mana. A Mystic Confluence, Impact Tremors, and Shark Typhoon. We are nowhere near the Shark Typhoon, so put that back. And yeah, I don't think I really care about the Impact Tremors either, so I'm going to draw into one of them. I'd rather it be the Shark Typhoon for later in the game. So we draw into Shark Typhoon. Like I said, not bothered about the Impact Tremors. I'd rather draw into more Mana Rocks, so we'll shuffle that away. And then we can slam down the Talisman of Creativity. Welcoming Vampire for our opponents, so looking to draw some cards with some other toxic creatures maybe. I can't actually remember how many mono white toxic creatures there are, to be honest. Alright, and there is another rock in the Arcane Signet, so yeah, we can go for the Arcane Signet, and then that allows us into the Swiftfoot Boots, and we can use Polluted Delta to go for a tap land. Even more card drawing Esper Sentinel this time, which they could probably get some card advantage from with us. They definitely get it from the Welcoming Vampire, staying at 6 cards in hand, making their 4th land. There we see a Norn's Decree. So we go up to the 3 poison counters. There are plenty of permanents that care about 3 or more poison counters, so that might become relevant this game. We'll get out the Volatile Fjord, and I think we are just going for the Shark Typhoon next turn, so that we can actually start blocking. It does mean that our opponent will draw with the Esper Sentinel, unfortunately. Might be that we have to rely on sharks for the Distant Melody. We could also just go for holding up the Mystic Confluence and resetting our opponent's board. I think I quite like getting out the Shark Typhoon here though, although playing it into Ovika is good as well. But playing Mystic Confluence into Shark Typhoon and Ovika is just as good, so yeah, we'll play Shark Typhoon and allow our opponent to draw with the Esper Sentinel. And if we draw into a land next turn, we can stand to get down the Ovika, which is going to be a headache for our opponent, I imagine. There is a Mondrak, Glory Dominus, which I am going to be playing on the channel. They turn in sideways with everything here. Do have an Emeria as well, but they're 3 lands away from making that relevant. So we go to 4 poison, no sign of Proliferate yet, thankfully. And there's a Keep Watch, pretty useless to us. So I think it does have to be the Mystic Confluence, and we can try and hinder our opponent with that next turn. Luckily we've got a decent amount of card draw in our hand for when we eventually do get our commander down. 2 lands away from switching on Emeria the Sky Ruin. And there is a Hero of Bladehold, which doesn't help them with the whole infect thing, but yeah, it's obviously more damage they're dealing to us. They've gone for some kind of white weenie strategy by the looks of it. So we'll go through to the beginning of combat phase and let's bounce some stuff here. Could have countered the Hero of Bladehold obviously, but I'd rather swallow up their turns by having them replay that. Might be a mistake, but we'll cast that. We'll draw a card and bounce a couple of creatures here. Bounce their 2 4-drops, that should buy us a decent amount of time. Obviously makes us a card with the Shark Typhoon as well. Could have waited for them to swing into the Shark Typhoon I suppose, but I'm not sure they would have done that. Anyway, we get a 5/5 Shark, and we are going to pay into Esper Sentinel as well. Alright, so forcing them to tap down the Skrelv. They can protect their Hero of Bladehold from a colour, so that won't be bounced here, but the other legendary creature will be. And we draw into Sunbird's Invocation, so if we can't get our commander down we can at least play that next turn. Alright, and there is a Heraldic Banner, so could play that to guarantee our commander next turn, but I think it's a better idea to get down Sunbirds. Although if we play the Sunbird's Invocation and then play our commander next turn, it doesn't actually trigger the invocation. So maybe just guaranteeing our commander next turn is a better idea. We're making blue tokens, but I'm going to name red with the Heraldic Banner because the Phyrexian tokens we make are red. We will pay into the Esper Sentinel so that they don't draw a card. We get a 3/3 Shark Typhoon, and then could obviously swing in and go for Keep the Watch, but we'll only draw 1 card, so yeah, just going to pretend to hold up some interaction here. Not equipping the Swiftfoot Boots might make our opponent think twice. They can obviously swing in with the Hero of Bladehold and they'll make 4 tokens with it, but they'll lose it in combat if they get down the Mondrak again. 1 card away from the Emeria the Sky Ruin, and there is a Signal Pest, so even more Battle Cry. Drawing with the Welcoming Vampire, staying at 6 cards in hand, and there is the Mondrak again. So they could make this thing indestructible if we're not careful. Luckily with this commander we do look to go for big alpha strikes. See if they want to attack here. Could give Hero of Bladehold protection from blue so that we can't block. Putting Battle Cry on the stack first is correct, so they get the tokens and they draw a card to the Norn's Decree. And there we go, Skrelv is giving protection from blue to the Hero of Bladehold. Once we've got the Phyrexian goblins in play, the Skrelv will become less relevant. But as of now they get +1/+1 on their attackers and 4 1/1 attackers, 2 of which we're going to kill off here. Alright, that's a shame we didn't get priority after blocking there, so I didn't go for the Keep the Watch in time. What I should have done is gone for this during the attacking phase before we block, although they could have reacted with this in response, so I don't suppose it matters. Anyway, sacrificing the creatures that were blocked, and that puts an indestructible counter on this. We'll go for drawing 3 cards anyway, because we've got plenty of card draw in our hand for after our commander comes out. So they do draw a card from the Esper Sentinel, and we get another 3/3 Shark Typhoon token, which is another reason that we should have done it during the attack phase, I suppose. We could have blocked an additional creature here. That is a mana drain and some more lands for us. Alright, and there is a Brightstone Ritual as well, so only counts goblins, so we do need our commander in play. Let's go for the Wooded Foothills, and we'll play out the Ovika and hope that our opponent doesn't have any kind of spot removal that they can use on that. In fact, we might as well put the Swiftfoot Boots on here. Yeah, because there's every chance that they'd be willing to pay 4 mana for Swords to Plowshares or something like that. So we look to start doing some crazy amount of damage next turn. We'll just continue to have them hold back their army, and they can use Skrelv to give the hero of Bladehold protection. Not dealing too much damage to us, and the Toxic has been switched off now somewhat. A Caged Sun, so they've made quite a cool Mirrodin style deck here. They've obviously gone for that kind of theme, and that does double up the number of the amount of mana that they make from their lands, and they do have 7 lands for the Emeria now, which is relevant. So now starting to swing in. We can block the Signal Pest, so they'll only get to swing in with that once if they're not careful. Getting a +2/+0 buff thanks to their Battle Cry. This thing is indestructible, don't forget. And then Pro Blue, not going for the blocking phase first, just deciding to straight up give this Pro Blue so we can't even block it. Obviously that does get given Toxic 1 as well, so we're at 6 points of Infect here. We'll block that thing just because it's a lot of damage. Block a 4/2 token, block the Signal Pest, and a 4/2 token, so that is 4, 8, 12 and 16. And that is 21 exactly, so it looks like our opponent has us here. So apparently that is what you do with the Skrelv. You give your decent attacking creatures protection and then they can get through. We were a bit too slow here. We typically like to get into Mana Vaults, and I can't put Jeweled Lotus in this deck annoyingly to slam down our big commander because it's bugged on Magic Online at the moment randomly. Grim Monolith and the like we want to get into really quickly, but unfortunately just too slow for the aggro player here, so getting us exactly. It might have been that we could have done something next turn. Yeah, that spits in the face. That's Mana Vault straight away. Could have stood to draw a lot of cards next turn, and yeah, we would have had a lot of mana thanks to both Brightstone Ritual and the Battle Hymn, so just not quite fast enough. Our creatures would have had haste. We would have made 6 goblins to this, and they would have been 3/3s once it enters. Could have started freezing things with Junkwinder, so yeah, just a turn too slow unfortunately, but it's good game to my opponent.